Cupertino City Council special meeting.
Recording in progress.
Today is July 6th at 8 o'clock. I'm calling the meeting to order. If you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Chow.
Here.
Councilmember Fruin.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mohan.
Here.
Mayor Wei.
Here. Thank you. We're moving to closed session report. City Attorney Jensen.
No, nothing to report, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Now we're moving into ceremonial items. Before we go into our report by Mid-Penn, I'd like to make a brief announcement. Each year, people throughout the country observe July as Parks and Recreation Month, recognizing that parks and recreation build stronger, healthier, and more resilient communities. Right here in Cupertino, parks and recreation programs are an integral part of our city. They build healthy, active communities and contribute to the economic and environmental well-being of our city and our residents. We have a fantastic parks and recreation department at the city, and the staff engages our residents, provides therapeutic and recreational services, ensures the ecological beauty of Cupertino, and so much more. Our city's parks and recreation areas and programs provide a place for all people to connect with nature and with one another. I'm happy to recognize July as Parks and Recreation Month and encourage all of you, our residents, businesses, and visitors to enjoy our parks and take full advantage of the many recreational opportunities that our city has to offer. Thank you. Now we'd like to move to item number 4, presentation from Mid-Peninsula Open Space Regional District. And I believe we have 2 esteemed guests here. Would you like to introduce yourself and make the presentation? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Wei and honorable members of the City Council. Thank you very much for making time, and you gave us a beautiful lead in with the Parks Month. So my name is Yoriko Kishimoto. I'm the president of the board this year, and also the director of Ward 2. And where's Greg?
I'm Craig Gleason, and I'm the director for Ward 1. And thank you very much for having us here.
Okay. Yes, and Craig was just elected last year. Since we have just a few minutes with you, we've agreed that I'm going to be making the presentation. But of course, I hope that you feel free to reach out to either of us with any questions now or in the future. Okay, so let's go to the first slide on the mission, and I'm going to get some help on advancing the slides. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Let's go back to the mission. Yes. So Mid-Penn has a very clear and wonderful mission, and it is to acquire open space, to restore the environment, and to provide ecologically sensitive public access. And on the coast, we added a 4th one, which is to preserve local agriculture. Next slide. And this is a snapshot, a map of our lands. The dark green represents the lands that we own on the public's behalf. What's not on there is Cloverdale. It's our newest acquisition. It's 6,000 acres on the San Mateo coast. Next slide. And this gives you just an idea of who we are. We're a public agency, a special district created in 1972 by a popular vote. 70,000 acres, 250 miles, and 7 of us elected officials. Next slide. And this is just going to be some beautiful pictures of 3 of our preserves, which I hope that you all enjoy regularly. This is Fremont Older Open Space Preserve. Next slide. Pichetti Ranch Open Space Preserve. And next slide, the Rancho San Antonio Open Space Preserve. And this is by far our most popular preserve, let's say 4,000 acres. And of course, very close to the urban areas, including Cupertino. Okay, next slide, yes. I want to spend most of my time on the project updates. Okay, next slide. And the first one has to do with this Rancho San Antonio. It's the multimodal access improvements. So the goal of this project is to invite as many people as possible to enjoy the parks, but with minimum parking and traffic impact. So our board did approve 6 strategies that are listed here. Bike facilities, a shuttle that we'll be looking at, carpool, restricted lot, and actually this real-time signage, which I think is very helpful. And then one of the projects is actually coming to the Cupertino City Council, I think later this month, which has to do with the bike lanes on Cristo Rey. Okay, next slide, please. And if you do go to Rancho San Antonio, you may see some people tabling about rodenticide reduction because we have found that coyotes, bobcats, raptors showing signs of rodenticide poisoning. So we're reaching out to the public to find alternatives. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this Middle Stevens Creek Trail is one which is one of our Measure AA projects, and this is actually, the lead is taken by the cities. So Cupertino is, I know you are quite familiar with this, I'm sure. But Mid-Penn has a little bit of funding, but we also have a lot of road kind of trail planning expertise, and also environmental and creek restoration expertise. So we'll be weighing in on kind of balancing public access and environmental protection. But I'm sure this project will be coming along. Next slide. And then, yes, the next project the Wildland Fire Resiliency Program is a very, very important project to us and probably to you. The CZU Lightning Complex really opened our eyes in terms of the potential impact. Next slide. And so this is, we have a program which is 4-pronged. I guess the most important one, the one you see probably every day, is the vegetation management. Just vegetation reduction, but in balance with the health of our ecosystem. And then there's a prescribed fire program, which we have not actually started yet, but we hope to very soon. There's a preserve by preserve planning process, and finally monitoring. Okay, next slide. Oh, and I guess that is it, because I think we try to keep it very short for you. But did you have anything to add on any of these?
Yeah, I'd just like to invite everybody, council members, staff, and residents to come out to the preserves and find the experiences that you like to find out there. And also, we like to hear from the public. You can do it online. You can come to our meetings at our headquarters in Los Altos, and it really helps us to hear from the public about what you would like to see, what you like, maybe what you don't you like, and we have a lot of great projects coming forward, so you can help to shape them. Thank you.
Okay, great points.
Thank you very much. Please stay. Thank you very much, President Yuriko and Board Member Craig. I'm going to open up to our council members. Do you have any questions for Yuriko and Craig? Yes, please, Council Member Chow.
Hi, thank you for coming. So I'm wondering what's your annual budget and where do you get your funding?
Okay, we get our funding from property tax. I mean, 90% of it, 90% plus is from property tax. And our annual budget, well, it depends on how you define it, but it's about 70 million.
So was there any bond measure that
Oh, there was a bond
issued
measure. There was a
for-
bond measure that was approved by the public, Measure AA, in 2014. That was a $300 million bond measure plan to be spent over 30 years. And so we're about 10 years into it, and that is the bond measure that has funded, Mount Amanam, the opening of Bear Creek, and so there's a lot of new preserves, which that bond measure has.
So you had funding to preserve, you said over 4,000 acres of coastal land?
What was that?
You mentioned that you purchased over 4,000
6,000.
acres.
Yeah,
6,000
4,000.
acres of
I think,
coastal land.
Yes.
So you had funding to
Yes,
support.
that's right. That the funding for the Cloverdale was largely funded by Measure AA, but also subsidized by our partner. We have a partnership with Post, and they they had purchased it many years ago, and they reduced the price to us. So they
That's
helped us
great.
subsidize.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Public, if you'd like to make a comment, you can make a comment during our oral communications. Okay, so thank you so much again, President Eurico and Board Member Craig.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so we're going to move to postponement and order of the day, which number 5. They recommend brush abatement for public nuisance and potential fire hazard pursuant to Cupertino Municipal Code and regarding defensible space and resolution number 23-053. The recommended action is to remove this item from future agenda since there are no properties reported as being non-compliant in removing brush. Well, congratulations to Cupertino. So may I have, is there any staff report on this? May I have?
I can just give you a quick update.
thank you.
Just that the brush is separate than the weed abatement program. It's for hillside properties mainly. Parcels are responsible for clearing brush that's combustible and flammable. And as you noted, tonight's hearing was set by council in case there were considerations for parcels that were on the list and they were objecting to it. But in this case, Cupertino has 0 properties that are non-compliant, so the recommendation, based on that information, there is no need to conduct the public hearings. So the recommendation is to table this item indefinitely.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Any questions from the council? If not, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move the recommended action.
May I have a second? Okay, moved by Councilmember Froon, second by Vice Mayor Mohan. Any more questions? If not, let's vote by light.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Now we're moving to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter within the jurisdiction of the council, but not on the agenda for discussion, including information items, and today also including our Mid-Penn Peninsula's report. So do we have any cards?
Yes, Mayor, I have one card in Community Hall from Richard Lowenthal. Welcome,
All right,
Richard.
thank you.
And I see one hand raised on Zoom.
Mayor Way and the council, it's great to be here before you. I'm very honored to have the chance to speak. I'm here about Parks and Rec a month, and I'm here about trails, so it's a good day. I want to make sure you caught what Eureka said, which is they are in a supporting role. They will help the city meet its goals, but the city needs to take the initiatives if you want to have trails and other recreational facilities, as she discussed, with trails continuing from, in this particular case, northward or southward of Linda Vista Park. I'm in favor of that, as you probably know. You know, we have a diversity of residents, and I think we need a diversity of diversions to go along with it. And that means things like trails and golf and softball and pickleball and tennis and cycling and all those other things that are coming before you. Residents need the diversity, especially because now you're adding housing, we'll have more residents and they need more recreation. So I'm urging you to make strides in areas of recreation for our city. I want to congratulate you on doing the Regnar Trail and the Linda Vista Trail, which I think have added to our facilities for residents and given them more things to do and getting out of the house and getting some exercise and getting healthy. So thank you for that. We can do more. I think I'll urge you to work with landowners, with Mid-Penn, with the County of Santa Clara, and with our residents to bring more trails. In particular, you've got 2 residents that are anxious to work with you to give you some land to put trails on, but of course they need something too. So that'll take a little give and take. But anyway, thank you very much. Thanks for your support of recreation in the city of Cupertino, and I'm hoping that you can take more initiatives going forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard. And now we will move to Zoom. We have one hand raised from San R. Welcome, San.
Hello, City Council. Hello, Mayor V. I would like to echo very well-spoken comments of our former Mayor Richard Lowenthal. I would encourage you to please think big, think long-term, think about your legacy. Trails are a lasting legacy that you leave behind. I would love to see support for more trails. I had the opportunity to walk the Pregnant Creek Trail for the fireworks, parking quite a distance away and walking the trail. I saw hundreds of residents taking the trail for the fireworks celebrations. And that was something unique and new that we did not have last year. So excellent new addition to the city that is a permanent, lasting legacy, and encourage you to think big and continue to do the same. I would also like to see more opportunities for trails in the current quarry area. I hope as you look at lands that the city can acquire both from the quarry as well as has been suggested before, working with the county to acquire the Montebello Elementary, I believe. There are opportunities to partner with the county and extend open parklands and open county area, and would love to see more trails and more ways to walk through the city. A lot of work has been done on biking and bike lanes, but would like to see equal amount of effort spent on trails, which is enjoyed by all members of the public. So thank you for doing that. I did want to talk briefly about the July 4th celebrations. It was very disappointing for families with young kids to see a lack of entertainment for young kids at the July 4th event in comparison to previous years. As has been spoken about before, there was no bouncy houses. There was no activities for kids such as games and face painting and a number of great events that Parks and Rec would normally put up that was completely absent. So if you showed up at the Memorial Park, there was the concert at 9:30, there was flag hoisting, and then there was nothing for the young kids, which was very, very disappointing. So a number of young families come by and leave seeing nothing to do. I was also surprised by the absence of flags around the city. I would encourage you to do an outreach program in future to encourage local businesses to hoist our flag and to hoist our flag at all city buildings. I would love to see the flag at the Blackberry Farm Golf Course, at the Cupertino Sports Center, even in front of the Quinlan Building. I would love to see a lot more presence of flags at city facilities, as well as city-encouraged outreach to various businesses. I was surprised the Blackberry Farm swimming pool was closed, which was really surprising. In summer, you'd like to see that open. And so I'm hoping that the city, with feedback from mayor and council, is going to do a lot more for July 4th in future. Thank you.
Thank you, San. Mayor, that was our final speaker.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. I'm closing the oral communication period and also thanked for the public comments. Thank you for taking the time to speak to council. All right, I'm going to move to consent calendar. Consent calendar 6 to 12. Do we have any consent calendar being pulled?
No, Mayor Way.
Okay, do we have council members who want to pull consent calendar? If not, I would like to open public comment for the consent calendar. Do we have public comments for consent calendar?
Mayor, I see no hands raised on Zoom, and I have no blue speaker cards for Community Hall.
Okay, so I will close the public comment period for the consent calendar and bring back to council for, do we have any discussions? If not, I would like to entertain a motion and a second to approve consent calendar 6 to 12.
I move to accept the consent calendar, items 6 through 12.
May I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Mohan, second by Councilmember Froon. And if no further discussions, let's vote by light.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Now we are moving to action items. There is no public hearing, so we go direct to number 13, introducing of ordinance amending Municipal Code Chapter 2.100, Regulation of Lobbying Activities. And may I have a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. If you give me a minute, I will share my screen, show a presentation. So before the council today is an item considering amendments to the lobbyist registration ordinance, which is currently codified as Municipal Code Chapter 2.100. There are both clean and black-lined versions of the proposed ordinance amendments in your agenda packet. There's also a desk item that was provided earlier today addressing council member questions. The ordinance was adopted by council in February 2021. And has been implemented by the clerk's office. Subject to certain exceptions, the ordinance requires organizations or individuals who conduct lobbying activities, as is defined in the ordinance, to register and comply with specified disclosure requirements. Presently, a total of 6 lobbyists are registered under the ordinance. In July 2022, the League of Women Voters of Cupertino Sunnyvale filed a complaint against the city in federal district court, alleging that the lobbyist registration ordinance infringed on the rights to speech and petition under the U.S. and California constitutions. The city moved to dismiss the complaint on the grounds that it failed to state a claim for relief, and that motion was granted on May 1st, 2021. LWVCS, the League of Women Voters, was granted leave to file an amended complaint. Despite the city's success in the litigation, there are some issues with the ordinance that need to be cleaned up and clarified. And so the city attorney's office did look at revisions to the ordinance. They did ask for input from League of Women Voters on those revisions. And the ordinance presented to you today is the city attorney's office recommendation for proposed revisions. And we'll walk through those now. These are the highlights of the changes that are shown in the red line, black line in your agenda packet. The staff report also lists these changes. The revisions are emphasized that the ordinance regulates paid lobbying directed at public officials as opposed to unpaid advocacy and communications directed at the general public. This is both that this further solidifies the ordinance against a First Amendment challenge, and again emphasizes that the relatively narrow nature of the restrictions on the rights to speech and petition that the ordinance imposes. The first significant change is in section 2.1-100-030, which revises the definition of lobbying and lobbyist, and it includes the deletion of the category of expenditure lobbyists from registration, i.e. Third parties that spend money to influence public opinion, including the opinion of elected officials. And that provision is recommended for deletion because these expenditures are really directed at speech that targets the public widely and not just elected officials. Registration would be limited to contract lobbyists, which is somebody who lobbies a third party for compensation, and organization lobbyists, which are defined in the ordinance, and do not include natural persons. Section 2.100-031 is revised to incorporate the current paragraph P of section 030, so that's just reorganization. And the exemption for lobbyist ordinance is organizational lobbyists is revised for clarity and internal consistency. There's also clarifications to the exemption for media activities, and the proposed ordinance expands and simplifies exemptions for nonprofit organizations so that all nonprofit organizations would be exempt from registration requirements. Section 2.100.090 revises information requirements for registration and clarifies the requirements for reporting contacts with city officials. These are primarily revisions for clarification purposes. Section 2.100.100 replaces quarterly reporting requirements with semi-annual reporting requirements. This is consistent with the Santa Clara ordinance on which this ordinance is largely based, and would reduce the burden of administrating the ordinance on the city clerk's office. And then section 2.100.030 is revised to add a willfulness or knowledge requirement for violations of the ordinance. Section 2.150 is revised to add a reference to administrative enforcement to clarify that is an additional mechanism for enforcing the ordinance. And then section 2.100.170 deletes practice restrictions, which in the current ordinance impose a 1-year practice restrictions on individuals or entities that have found to violate the ordinance, because this provision would be a total ban on advocacy and petitioning public officials during that period, and so that raises more significant constitutional issues. There are other provisions in the ordinance for clarity, internal consistency, and gender neutrality. There are a couple sections in the ordinance where we are asking council to choose between two different options and give direction to staff on which options they prefer. One is in section 2.100.30, where the option A would be to retain the $1,000 threshold compensation for registration as a contract lobbyist. Option B would be to increase that threshold to $5,000. The second instance of this optional language is 2.100.130, where the first option would revise provisions in the city ordinance to conform with state law. Option B would retain some provisions of the current ordinance, but delete others, and would not revise the ordinance to conform with state law. So the recommended action is to conduct a first reading of Ordinance 2249. If the City Council identifies preferred language for those two options and conducts a first reading of the ordinance will return to Council on July 18th for its second reading and adoption. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, City Attorney Jensen. I'm open up for council questions for our City Attorney Jensen. Any questions? Councilmember Chow?
Okay, so regarding the definition of nonprofit, so it seems if we are based on Santa Clara, I looked in Santa Clara City, Santa Clara County, and San Jose. They all distinguish specifically 501c3 nonprofit, so exemption applies to that. So I'm curious, do we have any distinction for the different type of nonprofit?
The recommended action does not make that distinction. There are two reasons for that. One is for clarity, and two is really to future-proof the ordinance, as First Amendment jurisprudence is definitely evolving in a direction of greater First Amendment protections for political speech, and while I think that there is current case law that certainly supports regulating speech by nonprofits in certain contexts, at least if there's not for compensation, I think that case law is shifting, and so that's the basis for this recommendation.
And then I think the desk item, you mentioned there are 6 or 8 lobbyists currently registered. The desk items said there were 2 last year and none this year.
So there were, I believe there's 6 that have registered. There were 3 quarterly statements submitted in the most recent quarter.
Oh,
Kirsten, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so we did just receive 2 additional today.
Oh, thank you. So that's news. So now I guess there were 5.
okay. So I'm curious, what's the administrative, I guess, what the city attorney's office need to do for this kind of report, whether it's quarterly and annually? How is the staffing impact?
City clerk's office actually administers the ordinance, so I'll defer to her to answer that question.
Just that it's infrequently, it is infrequent that there is any new additional information on lobbying activities on a quarterly basis as opposed to a
So-
6-month semi-annual basis.
So whether it's quarterly or semi-annually, all the city clerk's office does is to file it.
Yes, we receive it, we redact a copy, we post a clean copy and a redacted copy on the website, and then we collect any payments on an annual basis.
Uh-huh.
And then we send reminders, quarterly reminders.
Okay, so that's okay. And what type of lobbyists we have right now in the current ordinance? There are 3 types. So, do you have information on what category the current ones are?
So, City Attorney Jensen can probably speak to that, but I know it's just generally one type that is generally filing. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure
The
if I
type.
understood the
On
question.
the type, so the current ones are all.
You can look that up.
There was the organization lobbyist, expenditure lobbyist, and the contract lobbyist, right?
Right.
So the current registered ones are all contract lobbyists.
There might be an organization lobbyist as well.
Okay, and then one option is to lower the limit from increase limit from 1,000 to 5,000. So do we know what's the current expenditure that they are the compensation level for the ones that's registered right now?
So the most recent quarterly statements that I reviewed, which do not include the 2 that were apparently just received, there were no expenditures reported.
So I'm just trying to assess what's the impact of the 2 different options.
It's probably pretty limited just because there are so few lobbyists registered.
So it's limited.
Yeah, I would say that the impact is going to be limited either way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chow. Any more questions from the council? If not, I will open up for public comment. Okay, let's open up for public comment. Do we have any cards here?
Yes, Mayor, we have 3 requests to speak cards for Community Hall, beginning with Tracy Edwards, followed by Yvonne, followed by Louise Sadadi. And I see 6 hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. My name is Tracy Edwards, and I represent the League of Women Voters of Cupertino, Sunnyvale. We appreciate the proposed revisions to the lobbying ordinance, but believe there are 4 additional adjustments needed. In 2.100.30, we recommend option B, a threshold of $5,000. The ordinance proposed definition of compensation includes reimbursement of travel expenses. Neighborhood organizations that are volunteer-based could fall within the definition of organization lobbyist if the organization reimbursed travel expenses in excess of $1,000. By setting the threshold at $5,000, the council avoids the inadvertent characterization of unpaid volunteers and their organizations as lobbyists. The state of California uses a $5,000 threshold largely for this reason, and the League recommends the city follow the same approach. In 2.100.80, we recommend that only paid lobbyists pay registration fees. The city proposes to charge a fee to every lobbyist, regardless of whether that person is a paid lobbyist or a volunteer neighborhood activist. The League recommends that only paid for-profit lobbyists be required to pay a fee each year to register as lobbyists. In section 2.100.90, the regulation of campaign contributions, we recommend that this should be left to the state. Campaign finance is a matter already comprehensively enforced by the state of California. Therefore, proposed subsections D through H should be eliminated. If the city is intent on campaign finance regulations to the city code, the regulation of campaign contributions should reach all those who deal with the city, not just lobbyists. Therefore, if the city does propose restrictions, they should place it elsewhere in the CMC to do the most good for the city. And last, in section 2.100.130, dealing with the violations of the lobbying ordinance, the League supports option B. The proposed revisions expressly add into the municipal ordinance the state law prohibitions on lobbying, making this conduct a violation of both the municipal code and California state law. By making these unlawful activities the subject of a municipal ordinance, the city opens the door to the district attorney declining to prosecute these actions because they are also a city obligation. The League therefore supports option B in order to place in the enforcement obligation where it is best administered the district attorney, not the city attorney. We have provided in written form a more extensive set of comments, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Tracy. Next we have Yvonne.
Can I actually ask Ms. Edwards a question? Thank you. Thank you also for your written comments in advance, and I just wanted to clarify, if we were to adopt the League's recommendations today with regard to option B as pertaining to both section, I think it ends 030 and section ending 130, would that satisfy your concerns with regard to the section ending 080 on the collection of fees?
I can say mostly. I would say this, that if the ordinance is adopted as it has been proposed with both option Bs and the recommendation to eliminate 2.100.90, the campaign finance information, we could live with 2.100.80 not being modified.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next we have Yvonne. Welcome, Yvonne, followed by Luis Sadati.
Hello, and thank you for the time this evening. I'm just here to support the League of Women Voters in their analysis of the lobbyist ordinance. I think it's really important for me as a private citizen, a longtime resident and a mom and a volunteer in many different organizations to not have to pay fees or to have my speech or my organization's speech inhibited by the onerous lobbyist rules. So I support all the four of the suggestions that were proposed here by the League of Women Voters. That is the option B. And I just want to thank everyone on the dais, the staff, and the city attorney, and everyone who's spent time on this, looking through the wonky aspects of this law, and I really hope that you will vote accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yvonne. Next we have Luis Sadati. Welcome, Luis.
Hello. I very much appreciate the city attorney, the city manager, and the city staff for the great work on the proposed revisions to the lobby ordinance. However, I also agree with the 4 points of revision that the League of Women Voters just suggested tonight. I respectfully ask that that on 2.100.030, regarding the threshold compensation for being treated as a lobbyist, I would recommend the council adopt option B, a threshold of $5,000, because ordinary citizens that are lobbying for something that they dearly believe in but make no money and are below 5,000 should certainly not be expected to register as a lobbyist and pay $500. Secondly, on 2.100.080, registration fees, only contract lobbyists should be required to pay the registration fees. And third, on 2.100.090, campaign contributions ordinance should not be limited to lobbyists alone. Campaign contributions should be separately regulated. Therefore, the proposed restrictions should be placed elsewhere in the city ordinance to do the most good for the city. And fourth, 2.100.130, dealing with violations of the lobbying ordinance. This should be policed by the district attorney and not by our city attorney. The proposed revision expressly repeats state law prohibitions on lobbying onto our municipal ordinance. So this would make this conduct a violation of both the municipal code as well as California law. Therefore, I support option B in order to clearly place the enforcement obligation where it is best administered, the district attorney, and not our city attorney. Thank you to the city council, the city attorney, city manager, and city staff for their service to Cupertino.
Thank you, Louise. And we will now move to our Zoom commenters. So we have 9 hands raised, starting with Janavi, followed by Neil Park McClintock, followed by Jennifer Sharon. Welcome, Janavi.
Hi, I greatly appreciate Cupertino city staff for their great work and all their help with the proposed revisions to the lobbying ordinance. However, I strongly agree with all the points that the League of Women's Voters have presented tonight. I feel that freedom of speech is incredibly important, and people shouldn't be intimidated when voicing their opinions and advocating for an issue important to them by being called a lobbyist and having to pay, except if they are a paid contract lobbyist making over $5,000. So I really do hope the revisions to the ordinance are passed, but I thank each and every one of Cupertino staff for your hard work and service to Cupertino. Thank you.
Thank you, Janavi. Next, we have Neil Park McClintock, followed by Jennifer Sharon, followed by Danessa Tekmansky. Welcome, Neil.
Hello, my name is Neil Park McClintock, and I'm the president of Cupertino for All, also a Cupertino resident, and speaking in support of the League of Women Voters' suggested revisions to the ordinance. Thank you to staff and the city attorney especially for working with organizations in the community like the League of Women Voters to ensure that we have an ordinance that accurately classifies those who are paid lobbyists while encouraging freedom of speech and maintaining the integrity of the original purpose of a lobbyist ordinance, which is to make sure that we have good governance rather than to deter speech and to create a culture of paranoia. As one of the organizations that has been accused in the past of being paid to do certain things, including by prior elected officials who are on the dais, I can attest to the need to make sure that we have an ordinance that is about being legally compliant, in line with state law, and actually fulfills its purpose rather than going after citizens who want to promote certain ideals in the community. I support both options B for both the question of the threshold and also violations of the ordinance, or who should deal with violations of the ordinance, as well as ensuring that we are focusing on paid lobbyists rather than unpaid lobbyists. And also, I do believe as well that the DA should be the one who is in charge of the oversight rather than the city attorney. And with that, I will yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Next, we have Jennifer Sharon, followed by Danessa Tekmansky, followed by Rick Kitson. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, Mayor Way and City Council members. I'm speaking on behalf of myself tonight. As a longtime community volunteer, I was very concerned about the lobbyist ordinance that was put in place by the previous council. It seemed particularly targeted towards community organizations and nonprofits that spend their time and volunteer efforts to improving our community. These organizations have made significant and long-lasting contributions to Cupertino and should be commended instead of branded with the negative term of lobbyist. This is true even if council members do not support the activity or the focus of the organization. Though I appreciate the recommended changes proposed by our city attorney, I agree that the additional changes recommended by the League of Women Voters are also necessary. I particularly request that the requirement to pay lobbying fees by non-paid organization volunteers be eliminated. This is the section 2.100.080. Residents who ask for changes in their community are not lobbyists. Community organizations and nonprofits are beneficial for Cupertino and should be encouraged. I ask tonight that you acknowledge these truths and make the necessary changes to this ordinance, so that we as a community and city can work together for a positive future. Thank you to staff and the city attorney for your hard work on this ordinance, and thank you for considering my input tonight.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we have Danessa Tekmansky, followed by Rick Kitson, followed by Seema Linskog. Welcome, Danessa.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Oh boy, I'm not happy to revisit the lobbying ordinance, but we've already spent $45,000 on this, but I guess we need to do it. So I'm not quite understanding why it seems the major concern tonight is to appease the League of Women Voters, who are a very small sample of our 60,000 residents. I haven't heard anyone else complain about the ordinance. And I do have a question, and please don't take it with offense, but whether it's appropriate for the mayor to vote on this issue because of her previous position with the league and her affiliation as a member. I don't know if that's okay, and please don't take offense to that. I'm just trying to do the right thing. In the options to revise the definition of a lobbyist, I would like to have the compensation threshold lower than 5,000 for both contract and organizational lobbyists for any consecutive 3 months. Our city's smaller, and distribution costs, for instance, for targeted influential mailers are going to be smaller than for cities like San Jose. I think that raising the threshold to 5,000 in a consecutive 3-month period might make it easier for any agent to lobby city officials, but still be able to stay under the radar by doing it in an intermittent fashion, say for 2 months, and then taking a month off and coming back. I also, from my observation, it seems like some lobbyists come to council meetings more sporadically, where that meeting might have particular considerations, modifications, enactments, amendments, or whatever that are being considered over a period of maybe a month or two at most. So the continuous 3-month criteria seems, I don't quite understand that. I know you can't answer my question why it's a 3-month period. It seems kind of random, where somebody could easily effectively lobby city officials in a shorter period of say 2 months. And also in larger multi-stage long-term development issues, say as Valco, lobbying is going to come in many stops and starts over a year or more and not be continuous in a 3-month period. Likewise, if you had something like a promotional influential newsletter, couldn't a lobbyist just skip that every 12?
Thank you, Danessa. That is your time. Next, we have Rick Kitson, followed by Seema Linskog, followed by Gauri Chawla. I apologize. Welcome, Rick.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. My name is Rick Kitson. I am the Executive Director of the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce. I'm here this evening to express appreciation for the work of the city attorney to address difficulties in the previous ordinance and to speak in support of the staff recommended changes. In regards to some earlier comments about the League of Women Voters, I think it's important to acknowledge that for over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been one of the most esteemed and accomplished organizations as a champion for open and good government. We all benefit from their commitment to open government. The Cupertino Chamber of Commerce strongly supports the changes proposed by the city staff and the city attorney's office, in addition to the 4 changes recommended by the League of Women Voters. The League's recommendations add the essential elements of simplicity, equitability, and enforceability. The Cupertino Chamber of Commerce encourages the City Council to give these staff recommendations and the 4 recommendations from the League their most serious consideration, and hopes the Council will adopt these changes to further strengthen the quality of government and the quality of public discourse in our community. In fact, good government and good public discourse are 2 different ways to say the very same thing. Thank you to the City Attorney's Office for their important work, and thank you to the Council for their service.
Thank you, Rick. Next we have Seema Linskog, followed by Gauri Chala, followed by San R. Welcome, Seema.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Respected Mayor Way, Vice Mayor Mohan, and council members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm a commissioner with the city's planning commission, but today I'm speaking only as myself. I'm also speaking as the chair of Walk by Cupertino, a resident-led volunteer group, a Rotarian, and a Safe Routes to School parent, among many hats that I wear. Resident engagement and participation is the bedrock of our democracy. We sometimes take it for granted that any resident in Cupertino can get up in front of council at any time and speak on any topic, but it is an extraordinary privilege. It's unique to our country. It's enshrined in our Constitution. It gives our ordinary residents a voice in the governance of our city, and it should not and cannot be restricted or removed in any way. It is in fact the role of the council to protect the right of ordinary residents to speak their minds and advocate for their needs to the city, to the staff, the commissions, and the council. Walk by Cupertino concurs with all the points made today so eloquently by Tracy Edwards with the League of Women Voters. I also want to emphasize that this discussion is not about appeasing the League of Women Voters. It's about protecting the fundamental right to free speech of our residents. Setting the threshold at 5,000 with option B will help ensure that resident advocates, unpaid volunteers, and resident-led organizations don't get classified as lobbyists and penalized for their involvement in their community. Don't stifle the free speech of residents by imposing a fee for the right to speak to council. Only contract lobbyists should be subject to a fee, not unpaid residents advocating for their positions. Campaign contributions is a separate matter that requires a lot more detailed consideration, and it should be dealt with outside of this lobbyist ordinance. And finally, including state law prohibitions in our municipal code just complicates things unnecessarily. The city ordinance enforcement should limit itself to matters that are not already under the purview of the district attorney so as to maintain clear roles and responsibilities. Thank you to the staff and to the city attorney for your hard work on this issue. And thank you to the council for your time and for everything you do for the city.
Thank you, Seema. Next we have Gauri Chala, followed by San R, followed by our final speaker, Rhoda Fry. Welcome, Gauri.
Hello, my name is Gauri. I am a rising senior at Cupertino High School and a resident in Cupertino. I would like to support the League of Women Voters in their 4 suggestions to the lobbyist ordinances, and I agree with all 4 points that they have made tonight. I think it is important that setting the threshold, to set the threshold to $5,000, and to require that only paid contract lobbyists are required to pay a fee each year. I would also like to point out that it's important to broaden the regulations for the proposed restrictions, and that they should be placed in elsewhere and broadened to be best for the city of Cupertino. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters once again for their work and support their 4 recommendations. Thank you to the City Council, the City Attorney, the City Manager, and the City staff for your hard work in putting together your suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gori. Next we have San R, followed by Rhoda Fry. Welcome, San.
Hello, Mayor V and City Council. I would like to ask a procedural question, which is how this item came about on the agenda. Was it recommended by council members to be placed on the agenda? Or was this a work item that was identified ahead of time? I know we reviewed upcoming work items. I asked that because the residents have been asking for this light ordinance, and that has not been on the agenda. And there have been other items that residents have asked for that were pushed out to December. And yet we have this item on the agenda without prior resident feedback asking for this item to be placed on the agenda or any council members having identified this. Secondly, I would like to request that any council members that have a present or past affiliation with the League of Women Voters, please declare that and see if you might consider recusing yourself from any participation in this vote. Finally, I would like to ask that the change be considered as unnecessary. There has been no concerns that have been raised in past councils, and $20,000 a year is a fairly large sum for a organization that would allow for a number of lobbying participants to be able to accept on behalf of any organization. So I believe the current limit is sufficient. I believe this item ideally should not have been on the agenda given the priority of so many other items that residents have requested. And I would request council members to kindly declare your present and past affiliation with the League of Women Voters and consider in the spirit of good governance, which you advocate for, whether you should recuse yourself from this debate and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, San. And our final speaker is Rhoda Fry. Welcome, Rhoda.
Good evening, council members. I would concur with previous speakers who asked that council members who have had or have a close association with the league recuse themselves this evening. And I've submitted written comments. I hope that you take a look at them. Namely, we should keep the $1,000 limit. We should keep the quarterlies, and we know that that does not present excessive work for the staff. But the most important thing is transparency. This is what the ordinance was all about. And I'm going to ask you to leave it alone. If you got to change it, just change the him, her to they. The thing that really concerns me about this is the timing and how it is inconsistent with good governance. Sanar alluded to that this evening. How did this get on the agenda? You know, our previous city council, including our current city attorney, worked on this ordinance for a very long time. There was a lot of deliberation, and the League of Women Voters was nowhere to be found. I have previously been a fan of the League of Voters, but with their lawsuit that has cost the city over $40,000, that respect has evaporated. The proposed changes would dilute and eviscerate the hard work that has been done in the past, but the bigger issue is the timing. And I would ask this council to table this issue, let the lawsuit terminate. The city, and this is my comments, you can see all the paperwork which should have been included, in my opinion, in the agenda, that the city has given the League of Women Voters more time to respond on the lawsuit, which they shouldn't have filed in the first place. But the lawsuit was to be dismissed. So allow it to be completely dismissed and don't make any decisions under these veiled threats by the League of Women Voters. It's the optics just are not good here. We need to have transparency and we need to have good governance. Looking at this issue now in the context of what is going on with the lawsuit does not represent good governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhoda. And Mayor, that was our final speaker.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. I'm going to close the public comment for this item and bring it back to council for discussion. So I'd like to thank all the comments that made in the public comment. We appreciate your input. So I'm bringing back to council for discussion for 5 minutes each. And do I have a light? Councilmember Moore?
Okay. So, question for the city attorney. So, when members of the public come to the podium and they want to speak to us on an item, do they need to register as a lobbyist?
No.
Okay. So, in what situation would they need to register as a lobbyist?
An individual member of the public?
Member of the public, or I didn't see a single member from the League of Women Voters that apparently needed to register or did register. So under what circumstance, the way it's written now, would someone need to do that? Because apparently, and I just want to make this clear that members of the public are able to come and speak to the council without needing to register.
Yeah, there would be. I mean, they would not qualify as lobbyists, and there would be multiple exceptions that would apply even if they did. So they certainly would not be required to register. I mean, natural persons who are not contract lobbyists, setting aside the expenditure lobbyist provision, which I'm recommending that we delete. Natural persons who are not contract lobbyists are not required to register under any circumstances.
Okay, and I had wondered with regards to the Chamber of Commerce, because they have advocated for certain positions on bills. I have wondered if they needed to register as a lobbyist, but they did not. So I'm going to assume that the way our lobbying ordinance is written currently, that they did not need to register. Would that be correct?
So then, I don't know. I mean, there are certain provisions there are certain thresholds that you have to meet in the current ordinance to be required to register. So I wouldn't be able to speak to that. I would say that they would be exempt under the proposed revisions.
Under the proposed revisions,
right.
But not perhaps not under the current.
Well, I just don't have any information to answer that question.
Okay, and so looking at the municipal code for the functions and duties of the city attorney, because there were some requests that this be actually removed from your authority. Municipal Code 2.18.020, the city attorney would prosecute all violations of the city ordinance. So how would that work if we were to pass an ordinance and you wouldn't have the ability to enforce it, that someone else would enforce? I'm not able to follow that.
So it would be unusual. Generally, all violations of the municipal code can be enforced criminally. What happens much more frequently is that municipal code violations are enforced administratively. The revisions make it clear, because I think the current ordinance is ambiguous as to whether administrative enforcement is available here. So I actually think that's probably the more significant revision, is that it does make it clear that there's citation authority, and if the city were to enforce the ordinance, that would be the authority that we'd most likely rely on. I think it's probably been a very long time since the Cupertino City Attorney's Office has brought a criminal prosecution.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Chow?
So I'm confused by some of the comments. It seems some member of the public understood under the current ordinance, volunteer members of any nonprofit, they don't have to register under a current ordinance, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Although the current ordinance could be much clearer, and so that's part of why we are doing this.
Yeah, I want to clarify that because there's a lot of fear mongering because of misunderstanding. The current ordinance, as I read, also says that if someone is compensated for travel expenses, someone mentioned that, or meals, that's not included in the $1,000 limit, right? The compensation is beyond.
Generally, uncompensated lobbying that's not compensated beyond reimbursement for expenses would be exempt under both the current ordinance and the revised ordinance. The revised ordinance, I think, makes that much clearer and eliminates some internal inconsistencies where.
But I think I want to clarify the current ordinance. Even for the current ordinance, anyone compensated for travel expenses or meals as a volunteer, if they are not compensated in any other way, they don't have to register, right?
That's correct. I would characterize the revisions as clarifying revisions with respect to that issue.
Good to know that, because I think there is a lot of this misunderstanding. And then under the current one, sorry, I'll ask it another time. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So under the current one, I think it's quarterly reporting, which is why $1,000 per quarter, and for California, $5,000. Is that annually?
I don't know. I would have to look
in
at
other city, because 1,000 per quarter is equivalent to about 4,000 a year. So if you increase that to 5,000, are we saying that's annually?
So it would be a significant increase in the annual amount. That's correct.
If it's 5,000 per quarter, then that's 20,000 annually. That's a lot.
If it's 5,000 per quarter, it's 20,000.
So when we compare with other cities, their 5,000 is for what period? We don't really know. I assume it's annual.
Not necessarily, but I don't know. I don't have the details of that comparison to other cities at the top that available. I could certainly provide that.
And this is 5,000 on top of travel and any other.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Vice Mayor Mohan.
Thank you, Mayor Way. So I was looking through all the reams and reams of paperwork we have on this subject, and I was hoping I could just sort of condense it to something very simple and straightforward. So in general, if the state law has already codified it, there is no need, in my opinion, to include it in the Cupertino Municipal Code. It would be duplicative, it would be unnecessary, and it could lead to confusion. The material that the city attorney has provided clearly states that that a paid lobbyist needs to register, which makes it very simple. So if you're not paid, you don't register. If you get paid, you register. What else? The option B, the threshold compensation for registration. The current law says $1,000. We have the option of increasing it to $5,000. Now, are these numbers arbitrary? Why not $2,000? Why not $3,000? But there's a reason for option B and the $5,000, because it is in the state law. So why have a separate parameter for ourselves when the state law is very clear that it's $5,000 for whatever 3-month period, and so at least in the future we would be consistent with what the state is saying. What else? The quarterly reporting. It makes sense to do a semi-annual just because there's so little activity. I looked at the the list of paid lobbyists. There are six of them, and I think that number stayed consistent for a long time. So it's not like we're getting hundreds and hundreds of lobbyists wanting who should be registering. The violations, again, it is a state requirement. If the state says it's a state responsibility, let's leave it to the state and not include it for the city to determine. What else? I think that's probably it for now. Oh, the reporting of the contributions. We already have it, and believe me, those of us who campaigned recently had tons and tons of paperwork to do about campaign contributions. So if it's already available, if it's already on record, it's a public document, it's easily available to anyone who wants to know, why are we duplicating it by having a separate accounting of contributions by the lobbyist? It's available. It's no one's trying to hide anything. It's there. So those are my comments for now, Mayor Way, and maybe I'll come back to it later. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Mohan, and I think Councilmember Froome, you're next, followed by Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, before I continue further, I just wanted to clarify one point with respect to who put together the ordinance in its original form. I think there was one member of the public who commented claiming that you, Mr. City Attorney, were involved in its construction, and I don't think that that's accurate. I think you inherited this ordinance, did you not?
Yeah, the prior city attorney worked on this ordinance. That's correct.
Very good. All right, I will reserve the rest of my time.
Councilmember Moore, you have 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Okay. To the city attorney, it was the prior city attorney. Are you talking about Heather Minner from Shoot-Mahali?
That's correct.
Okay. So I was wondering where the lobbying activities are recorded on our city's website. So I'm looking at the City of San Jose's website because they have their lobbyist reports, and I was wondering if we have reports of the actual contact. And I'm just going to bring up one application that was turned in from a lobbyist, and this one says that the legislative of administrative actions the business or organization lobbyist seeks to influence, and they list them all: the tax sharing agreement, city finances, project briefing, permits, other matters before the mayor, city council, city board, city commissions, other matters before the task force or city associated joint powers authority, other matters related to housing, planning and revenue, affordable housing. So when I think about transparency and for the public wanting to know who's contacting the city council, and I look at all of these listed activities that this particular lobbyist is interested in doing, that is definitely something that I would want the public to have access to. And going back to my original question, do we have those actual contacts being provided for the public to know when they met with certain members of the city council?
So I can answer that. All filings are located on the city's website. You can just type in the search box lobby registration, and that would take you to our lobbyist registration page. At the bottom, there is a link to the public portal, and each filing is posted.
Thank you.
Can we have other do it, because your time is...
We can get back to it.
We'll come back to it. Okay, thank you. I think we have Councilmember Chow's raised hand, and about 1 minute and 40 seconds.
Another concern many people raised is anyone who is not compensated shouldn't have to pay for the registration. So under the current ordinance, my understanding, no one who is not compensated, even if someone is compensated by travel expenses or meals, they don't have to register. Anyone who registers is actually paid, right, under the current one.
I think that's true if you parse through the ordinance. I think it's convoluted, And
Yeah,
so part of
it's
what we're
just-
trying to do is clarify that.
So it's just the language is not clear. But then I want the public to know that under the current ordinance, no one who is not compensated beyond their travel expenses would ever have to even register or pay any registration. That needs to be clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple questions. City Attorney, I'm a little confused on the comments. Some says the compensation of travel is included in the 1,000 or 5,000. Some said it's not. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so an individual that doesn't receive compensation beyond reimbursement for expenses would not be required to register under any circumstances.
To amount of 1,000 per 3 months or 5,000 per 3 months, or it's the compensation for travel is not included.
The compensation for travel would not be. They would just be exempt from registration requirements.
Understand. Okay, thank you. Question I think maybe 2 or 3 residents alluded to is if a council member is affiliated with the League of Women Voters, and I must say I was a board member of the League of Women Voters, but I am not a board member anymore, and I had no idea of the lawsuit, and also, but I am a member of the League of Women Voters because that is a good organization to belong to, and I believe in empowering, voters. So, am I required to recuse myself because of that? Because my previous being on the board of the league, and now I'm still a member of the league.
Right, without speaking to any specific council member circumstances, being a member or an uncompensated board member of a nonprofit organization does not generally constitute an interest that requires recusal under the Political Reform Act.
Okay, thank you. And I do understand the league is a good organization, so I understand we have other council members belong to a different league. I'm just want to clarify because I do belong to the Cupertino Sunnyvale League. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Chow, you have about 1 minute.
Okay, so regarding the campaign contribution, the language in the ordinance is referring to also intermediary contribution. So I'm curious whether this is a standard section that's included in other lobbying ordinance, like Santa Clara, San Jose, which is why it was included, and then your proposal was to retain this section.
Yeah, I don't believe that was changed. If I'm not mistaken, that was carried over from the Santa Clara ordinance.
So that's probably a standard, and it does apply to intermediary contribution, not just campaign.
Right.
Right.
If somebody who accepts who accepts a contribution on behalf of another person, that's correct.
Yeah, because okay, yeah, thank you. And also for disclosure, I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Southwest Santa Clara Valley, which include Santa Clara, Los Gatos, Kimball, and Saratoga. And I am proud to be a member of that league since 2017, I think. And I am especially proud that our league, the leaders are very careful to not use their official title when attending any city council meeting, to not influence local politics. Our mission is to educate the public on how to best involve with democracy. And I think legislation through lawsuit is not the best example for League of Women Voters to represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chow. And I do have one more question for City Attorney Jensen. You mentioned a couple times that the new ordinance is to clarify certain ambiguity of our original ordinance. Can you specify a little bit more on that?
So, I mean, it's hard to generalize because there were a number of clarifying changes that were made. But just for take an example, there were some inconsistencies between the definitions and the exemptions. So that some things that were exempt were not actually ever covered by the definition of lobbyist. So it's just a logical flaw in the current ordinance that needed to be corrected. There are other areas where it's just the language is unclear, and we're trying to make it clearer.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore, you have another, so I'm going to give a couple of minutes to each council members because you have a question, I think.
Okay. Thank you to the city clerk. And if you do scroll down through the application, you'll get to the reporting part where there will be an indication of the contacts that were made. So when this ordinance was passed, it was February 2021, I believe, and there was no dispute that happened from the League of Women Voters regarding this. And instead, a lawsuit was filed sometime around July of 2022. But it's a question for the city attorney. Were you ever contacted by the League of Women Voters before the lawsuit was filed with any suggestions for edits? And the reason I ask is because we've now spent over $47,000 on outside attorney fees, and that is not including the your work in the city attorney's office. So were you contacted?
No, I was not.
Okay. So this seems a little bit backwards. Also, as I mentioned before, we don't have a single member of the League of Women Voters who apparently needed to register as a lobbyist or did register as a lobbyist in all this time. So apparently they even, though they take issue with the lobbying ordinance, they were apparently not even subject to it. Does that sound about right?
So I don't know. I mean, it's quite possible that some of the people that registered are members of the League of Women Voters, but it's not clear from their registration that that's their affiliation.
So are you suggesting that some perhaps maybe should be registered under this ordinance and aren't?
No, I'm just saying that I don't have access to the membership list for League of Women Voters.
To be able to tell that.
Right.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other discussions from, okay, 2 minutes?
Just want to clarify. Any member of the League of Women Voters who wants to advocate on behalf of the League, usually they are all volunteers, so they didn't have to register under the current ordinance.
Yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely, that's correct.
So I think it seems a lot of the objection to the current ordinance is based on a misunderstanding. And then when the public has a misunderstanding about any city ordinance, what is the best course of action to clarify such misunderstanding? They can reach out to the council members, and maybe then we can get the city attorney to clarify, right? Is that maybe we can help the public understand a better way to help improve. I mean, any legislation we adopt, there could be misunderstanding, ambiguous language, and we are happy to amend them to clarify the language. So what's the best course of action for the public? Maybe it's this one, maybe it's a light ordinance, maybe it's another ordinance.
Yeah, I don't think I could answer that question in the abstract. I mean, obviously members of the public have rights to speech and petition, and they have rights to have access to the courts as well. Whether that was wise in this case or not is not really my place to say.
But then they can easily email the city council, and if they have any concern about the ordinance, and the council can reach out to the city attorney to clarify, perhaps. And maybe we can then request a report from the city manager's office to put on a council meeting to clarify any misunderstanding, right?
Certainly that's an option, and certainly that would be an option.
Then that wouldn't cost the city $47,000 plus staff of outside attorney time. Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments from the council to have an? So I like to make some comments. I do believe the League of Women Voters is a good organization to be a member of. Both Councilmember Chow and I are a member of the League, and they do really good things. And I believe they're not going out for their own benefit. I think they're watching out for every citizen. So I do believe that what they're doing right now, it's not just because they're not included in the ordinance that they're doing this. Even if they are, I don't think they're doing it for their own good. That's what I believe in the League. The second thing is I do believe the clarification of the original lobbyist ordinance need to be done. There are good reasons for us to review this and make it clear so that we protect our public's rights to speak and also seek out the real lobbyists who are lobbying our cities. So I just want to clarify, it doesn't matter whether the League's members are not being included in the original ordinance. They are doing this for the sake of the public. That's how I observe it. And the second is, I think it is necessary to do the language cleaning. And it's also because writing to council may not result in actions. So we're not speculating why the League does this, but we are facing an issue that we need to work right now. So that I really think we're not speculating the motives, but I do believe the motives is for the public good. Thank you. So, Member Froon, I believe you have plenty of time.
Thank you. So I wanted to thank everybody who came out to speak tonight, especially the people who represent civil society organizations. I think and I hope that we are in general agreement that regulating paid lobbying activities of for-profit entities is appropriate and a valuable social good, but I equally hope that chilling the speech of individual members of the public and our local nonprofits is undesirable. And as with every public policy, there is a correct balance that we have to strike, and it's our job as council to try to strike that balance. I'm not of the opinion that our existing lobbyist registration ordinance does that, especially based on the response that it provoked from members of the public when it was suggested last year in particular that we add from this dais a private right of action to the ordinance. That is, the ability of members of the public to sue each other, claiming that somebody is an unregistered lobbyist. In a city that is as litigious as ours, unfortunately, I think that is a recipe for disaster and for destroying speech in general. What we have at present is also, by acknowledgement of the city attorney and others, an ordinance that has been sutured together from other ordinances in other jurisdictions. And there are a variety of pieces of statutory detritus that sit inside of it. One of those, for example, is a reference to neighborhood associations. Well, that reference comes from the city of San Jose, where neighborhood associations are an actual institution, and the reason that they are accepted has to do with the fact that they have separate reporting obligations. It has no bearing on the city of Cupertino, and yet it's in our ordinance as it stands. And even in the city's own motion to dismiss the litigation over this ordinance, our own council admitted that the exceptions carved out in it could be phrased more clearly. So it's no wonder that many in the public would be confused about its reach or choose to remain silent instead of participating. So now that it's back before us, we have the chance to strike a better balance. And I think that the suggestions that the League has put forward today are good ones, and I intend to support them. Thank you.
I do believe we each have 5 or 7 minutes of discussion and expressing our opinions already. I am ready for someone to make a motion so we can move forward. Does anybody want to bring out a motion? Vice Mayor Mohan?
Sure. I move to conduct the first reading, amending Municipal Code Chapter 2.100. Is there anything else? Which regulates lobbying activities.
May I have a second?
I'll offer a second if I can get a friendly amendment.
Okay, please state your friendly amendment.
Sure, that we would enact the ordinance with the following modifications. First, that section 2.100.030 be modified in accordance with option B as presented in attachment A to the staff report. Second, that section 2.100.130 be modified in accordance with option B as presented in attachment A to the staff report. And third, that the proposed subdivisions D through H inclusive of section 2.100.090 be struck, and that the remaining subdivisions be renumbered accordingly.
Vice Mayor Mohan, do you?
I'll second.
Okay, so you accept the friendly
I
amendment?
do. I meant to say the whole thing, but Councilmember Froon said it better.
Okay, so we have a motion with a friendly amendment accepted by the original. Vice Mayor Mohan made the motion, so I'm open for discussions. Councilmember Moore?
Okay, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we move the recommended action with option A and not option B.
Okay, that's a substitute motion to approve the recommended by the staff, but with a option A on the number. Let me look at the number. 2.100.30.
As well as 2.100.130.
130.
Correct.
Okay, both of it. Okay, I just want to clarify.
There are two options.
Do we have a second?
So both of them, right? And so that does that include is the reporting still quarterly or semi-annual?
Quarterly. She did not change that. If I may, yes.
I thought the first option A was not about. It was the amount, not about the reporting period.
That's
Right.
correct.
There
Councilmember Moore's motion does not direct it at the reporting period, which would remain semi-annual as proposed in the ordinance.
So the reporting period would be semi-annual.
Right. So you need to you need to decide whether you're going to second the motion or not.
So semi-annual with option A, that then it's $1,000 over 3 consecutive months, or when it's semi-annual, are we saying $2,000 over 6 months? So it's 1,000 over 3 consecutive months.
It's stated here.
Yeah, it's 1,000 over 3 months. The reporting is semi-annual. So but I mean, I think we're on to.
So option B is 5,000 for every 3 months. That's 20,000 on top of travel and other expenses. So only those people need to register.
Councilmember Chow, I believe the mayor asked for whether it's a second. If you're not interested in seconding the motion, then I don't think you have the floor.
Okay. Yeah, I'll second that.
So we have a substitute motion.
But I have
made by Councilmember Moore, second by Councilmember Chow. We'll open for discussions. Yes.
I have an amendment. I'd like to...
Friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to, for exemption number 13, which states actions taken by a nonprofit organization or its officers or employees are exempt. And I'd like to add 501c3 nonprofit. So it aligns with the other lobbying ordinance, because any donation to 501c3 is transparent, but for other organizations, they don't have to disclose their donors.
Okay, thank you. I believe you're looking at 2.100.03113, and you're adding that distinction. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I accept.
Okay. So We have a substitute motion made by Councilmember Moore, second by Councilmember Chow, with a friendly amendment accepted by Councilmember Moore. Do we have any further discussions? If not, I'm asking for a light vote, but light on the substitute motion with the friendly amendment motion. So let's vote by light.
Okay.
The substitute motion as amended fails with Chow and Moore voting yes.
So I'm going back to the original motion made by Vice Mayor Mohan and second by Councilmember Fern with a friendly amendment. And are we clear with the friendly amendment?
Yes, I
Okay.
would like to make a closing quick comment. Yes,
I think we're making discussions on the current proposal
Yes,
on the motion on the table, please.
Yeah. So this is something in the future, when we have an ordinance come in and it's approved and we have a significant amount of time passed, it would be my preference that an organization, individuals would come to the city attorney and council and make the suggestions and make the case for why that ordinance needs to be changed and that it's brought to us in that manner as opposed to essentially lawyering up and suing us, which is what happened here, and then that case was dismissed. So in the future, I would like to see this process done in a lot more congenial manner where we're having these discussions particularly during the discussion of the actual ordinance. Because now we've lost a good deal of money, over $47,000.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. And any more comments? Please
So
comment
my
on the
earlier
proposed motion, please.
regarding option B was, according to the proposed motion right now, someone who might be paid $20,000 a year on top of travel expenses, which could be thousands of dollars, and lodging and meals, only those would register. Anyone who is paid less than that might hardly be no one. So so Vice Mayor Mohan, I would like to clarify, is that your intent? Only anyone who is compensated annually by $20,000 on top of, not including the reimbursement for travel, lodging, or other expenses.
I do believe the motion and the friendly amendment said very clearly. And Councilmember Froon, you have your hands on your button.
Yeah, I just think that's a significant overstatement of what the compensation level would be. The requirement would be that you had to pay at least $5,000 or get paid at least $5,000 in a 3-month continuous span of time. That is not the same as saying $20,000 a year.
So $5,000 for 3 months. That could be $20,000 a year.
Could be is very different from saying that it is, and you're saying that it is.
So
encourage both the speakers to speak through the mayor.
Okay.
Yes, so I think the ordinance is very clear, and so your question is if. So I don't think this is part of the
another question,
argument.
I think I didn't get a clear answer was this $5,000 I'm told is based on California standard. But California standard, my understanding, that's not based on a 3 months.
Again, I would point of order. I would request that the speakers seek to be recognized by the mayor before speaking.
I thought I was recognized by the mayor. I wasn't.
Sure.
The mayor asked me to ask question based on the motion, so I was asking my question based on the motion, trying to understand the scope.
The question is who are you asking the city attorney to answer your question? Are you asking the city attorney to answer your question?
I was asking the motion maker whether this is the intent. So I would like to propose a potential friendly amendment and see if the motion maker might accept. Could I?
So, City Attorney Jensen, can the council member Chow make the friendly amendment, even though she's not the second or motion
No, she could make a motion to amend the motion that's on the table.
Okay.
I mean, usually I would propose a friendly amendment and see if the original motion maker would accept. If she doesn't accept, then I can make my own motion, right? That's the usual process.
Yes, except that you're not you're neither made nor seconded this motion.
I thought usually I can propose something and see if the original motion maker might accept and the seconder might accept.
You could ask Vice Mayor Mohan through the mayor if she's willing to modify her motion.
Yeah, that's
Please
my intent.
make a friendly amendment.
Okay. So since the ordinance is changing to semi-annual reporting, I think it makes sense to say that, okay,
you state your friendly amendment.
My friendly amendment is no more than $5,000 per 6 month period, which is a reporting period. That's my amendment.
Through the mayor.
Yes, please.
I understand what you're saying, Councilmember Chow, but my intent was not to alter anything other than the $5,000 threshold. And the reason I came up with 5,000 was because it was consistent with state law. So if the state law says 5,000, it says 5,000 per 3 months.
No, state law does not say 5,000 per 3 months. We don't know that.
Through the mayor, can I get a clarification from the city attorney?
Yes, but you'll have to give me a minute.
Mayor, would you
Yes.
like me to read the conduct first reading, the title of the ordinance, and that the further reading of the ordinance be waived before you?
Sure. Okay, thank you.
While the attorney's looking this up. So this is the first reading of ordinance number 23-2249, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino amending City Code Chapter 2.100, regulation of lobbying activities.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. While we are waiting for City Attorney Jensen, do we have any more questions?
So the state requirement is $5,000 per quarter.
And your friendly amendment is $5,000 per quarter?
Then it doesn't need my amendment.
No, but no, it does, because the current motion is $5,000 per, as the league recommended.
Current is 5,000 per quarter already, right?
Currently, the Cupertino ordinance is $1,000 per 3 month period, which is it was slightly different than $1,000 per quarter.
Oh.
Slightly different than 5,000 per quarter.
Similar, and now we are changing that to 5,000 per consecutive 3 months.
Right, whereas the state requirement is $5,000 per quarter.
Oh, okay, slightly different but similar.
Correct.
Yeah.
So is that? I think that was your friendly amendment.
No.
No, sorry.
Yeah. So I withdraw my amendment.
Okay, so we still have the original motion with Councilmember Froon's friendly amendment on the table. And can we clarify it exactly? Councilmember Froon, can you speak your friendly amendment? Thank you.
I'm happy to reread it. That the that the proposed revisions in the ordinance be reenacted with the following modifications. First, that section 2.100.030 be modified in accordance with option B as presented in the attachment A to the staff report. Second, that section 2.100.130 be modified in accordance with option B as presented in attachment A to the staff report. And third, that proposed subdivisions D through H inclusive of section 2.100.090 be struck and the remaining subdivisions be renumbered accordingly.
Thank you, Councilmember Froon. That friendly amendment was accepted by the Councilmember Vice Mayor Mohan, the original motion. Okay, so we are ready for another round of discussion.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
Councilmember Moore, followed by Councilmember Chow.
Thank you. This is a question for the city attorney. Where did you find the $5,000? I was just quickly flipping through the FPPC regarding contract lobbyist, and I'm seeing 2,000. It might perhaps be that they've updated since 2019, but they're showing. I'm seeing a contract lobbyist as an individual who lobbies for someone other than his or her employer and receives or is entitled to receive $2,000 or more in a calendar month, engaging in direct communication. So you are probably pulling from somewhere else. I was wondering where.
Well, the FPPC website, but I did just look that up while I was sitting here, so you can take the quality control with that process for what you will. But that's what the FPPC website says.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Chow?
So I have a substitute motion.
It's a substitute motion, not a friendly amendment.
No.
Okay.
Substitute motion to rescind the lobbying ordinance, because with the entire California, we have like how many million of people? The limit is 5,000 per quarter, and for a tiny city of Cupertino, if the limit were 5,000 per 3 month period, I don't think anyone would ever qualify. And having an ordinance that has no effect is costing city staff time, and that really doesn't make sense. I propose we just rescind the ordinance.
We have a separate motion by Councilmember Chow to rescind the lobbyist ordinance. Do we have a second? If not, the motion does not carry. So if I can make a friendly amendment, since we just found out that the state law is 5,000 per quarter, would Vice Mayor Mohan and Councilmember Froome accept to follow the state law to make it 5,000 per quarter instead of 5,000 per 3 months? Everything else remains the same as the friendly amendment and the motion. Just yes or no. It's
So can I get
what's the procedure? The motioner goes first, or the second?
So I believe the movement should decide whether she will accept the request
Right, so
to modify her motion, and then seconder.
So
can.
Vice Mayor Mohan first, and then followed by Councilmember Froome.
So Mayor, could you
Yes.
Repeat the
So instead of as choosing B on section 2.1000, 2.100-030, to choose B, to modify it to be the limit is $5,000 per quarter.
And that is consistent with the state.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
I would second it.
Accept.
Accept it.
So, Councilmember Froome?
I'll accept it.
Okay, so we have a motion with a friendly amendment with another friendly amendment. Anybody clear on what the second friendly amendment is, the current motion on the table? Okay, if there are no further...
I do have a question. If we are trying to align with California standard, they say calendar quarter. I found that here. And I wonder whether this $5,000 include the expenses for travel and lodging and the meals, or
City Attorney Jensen, could you
excluding those
answer that
expenses?
question?
I don't have the answer to that question sitting here, no.
Yeah. I guess we can vote on it and then clarify later if that's... I was a little confused. That's why I asked that question. Does reimbursement for traveling included in the 1,000 or the 5,000? I thought I got an answer that said no, but then I'm not sure right now because the league seems to think that's included. In the reimbursement is included in the 1,000 or the 5,000. Or right now the amendment is 5,000 per quarter instead of 5,000 per 3 months. Will we? Anybody know for sure?
Through the mayor,
yes.
I believe I have clarified with the city attorney earlier. The current ordinance, the 1,000 does not include the travel, lodging, meal expenses, and the proposed one clarified, but the language was convoluted. I agree, but the proposed one clarified that this limit in 1,000 or 5,000 does not include travel expenses and so on.
Okay.
My question was, since we are trying to justify the 5,000 by aligning with the state, I'm curious, for the state, 5,000 per quarter, does that include travel and other expenses, which I don't know. Our current ordinance, either the current or the proposed one, the money amount does not include the travel expenses. That's my understanding.
Is that, sorry, City Attorney Jensen, we'll wait until you do your research.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer that question.
Actually, I'm not asking about a state. I'm asking about our current proposed change. Does it include the travel expense reimbursement or not?
No, it's based on
Okay.
$5,000 in compensation,
Okay.
which is value for services performed.
Okay, so now we do have a amendment with friendly amendment. According to this, it's not. Oh, Councilmember Froome, your light just went off. Okay, so the current motion is to approve the staff report with the friendly amendment by Councilmember Froome and another friendly amendment by me, and with the $5,000 per quarter, that does not include reimbursement for travel, meals, and as such. If there are no other discussions, I'd like to have a vote on the current proposal with friendly amendment and friendly amendment. And as to whether the state, I don't think it matters. It's not included in our motion anyway. So can we vote by light? Are we ready? Okay.
Vice Mayor, please vote with your light.
Council, Vice Mayor Mohan, you will probably need to do another one. Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay. The motion as amended and modified carries with Chow and Moore voting no.
Okay, thank you. And I think City Attorney Jensen, you can get back to that question to us if later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we are moving to number 14. Consider actions for the surplus determination and disposal of. Do we have the address correctly? 10301 Byrne Avenue, assessor parcel number 357-11-020. And do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, we have a staff report prepared by Assistant City Manager Matt Morley.
Good evening. Great to be here with you this evening. My presentation is ready. Wanted to bring you through the initial stage of the process of disposition of the property on Byrne Avenue. This is a property that was purchased in 2017 for the sole purpose of creating a space for bike and ped access to Blackberry Farm. There's a plat and legal description that adjusts the property to accomplish just that, so it changes the property layout and dedicates a portion of the property to roadway for that bike and ped access. With approval of the recommended action, the staff will record the plat and legal with the county, and that will set the legal property line for the new sized property. And with that, we would have a remnant property that would be surplus to the city, no longer needed, and that would be the property that the single family residence is on. The image on the screen now shows the area in red that would be dedicated, and then the green portion would be the remainder. The surplus property is managed by or defined by the Surplus Land Act, State of California law. And so we would follow that process. Tonight would be the first stage in that process in determining that this property is indeed surplus to the needs of the city. With that, we would notify appropriate entities, including and focused on housing. The state is focused on housing uses for properties, but also some other entities. And that noticing would allow for 60 days so those entities could determine whether they would have an interest in the property. If they do have an interest, then they would express that to the city, and we would negotiate with them for a period of 90 days towards conclusion on the sale of the property for their interested purpose. So this is sort of priority opportunity for these entities to discuss purchasing the property. If there is no interest expressed, then the property would be surplus and it could be offered for at market rate to the highest potential buyer for the property. We would propose listing the property in that case for sale for 2 weeks and sale to the highest non-contingent offer. All of these items, when we talk about sale and terms and price, would come back to council for discussion in closed session as part of the property discussion. So with that, tonight the recommended action is to authorize the roadway dedication, to declare the property surplus and notice it per the Surplus Land Act, and to authorize the city manager to offer the property for sale should we have no interest in the property. And that concludes our report, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Morley. I'm going to open up for council questions before we open up for public comment. Council questions? Councilmember Moore?
Okay. So there were 3 properties that were on the work program, and it was the Bletch House, Byrne, and Stockelmeyer. And I was just wondering how this came to be kind of separated out and suggested for sale as opposed to just coming up for a kind of a generic discussion about the property and what we should do with it.
This one came forward because the original intent and direction from council was to purchase this property in order to acquire the right-of-way. And this completes that process, and so per prior council direction continues to follow along in the process. So that's why we brought this one forward. The other 2 properties, as you can imagine, will take a little bit more discussion and work, and so we'll bring those forward for separate discussion through the work program.
Okay, thank you. And then through the mayor, where would the funds go from this property? So do we have a policy in place that says that it's going to be for BMR housing, perhaps, or something of that nature?
The funds will come to the city into the unallocated reserve, and the council will make a decision at a future point on how to appropriate those funds.
Okay, and again through the mayor, is there any way that would be tied into the real estate investment policy discussion, or could it be tied into that so that we've got something kind of cohesive? Is that a possibility?
So certainly if the council desires to have a real estate investment policy, that would be something we could bring forward for you. The city doesn't have any after Byrne, any real estate really to speak of that is not currently used for municipal use. So having a policy for sort of exceptions is maybe not an effective direction to take.
Okay, thank you. And through the mayor, so there is a question of how are we going to deal with the sale funding from that, and so I do hope we have some variety of suggestions for it, whether it is BMR or parkland, something like that.
Through the mayor, if I may, Councilmember Moore, you brought up a good point. If this is something that council desires to put on the work program for next year for us to bring back a policy, we're certainly able to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions from other council members? Councilmember Chow?
Hi, thank you. So the staff report says the sales price will be negotiated per market rate. So if it were a nonprofit that's serving disadvantaged group, what would be the process of negotiating the price?
So there are two phases of discussion here. The first is in the offer to, so that priority offering of the property for housing, schools or parks and open space. We wouldn't expect the latter to have an interest in the property due to its size and location. For the housing, there may be an interest for that use. If there is, then we would bring the proposal, which would be not a market rate proposal, we suspect, but we would bring that proposal regardless back to the council for discussion in closed session. Should we have no interest and it go be listed for sale, as any typical single-family residence might be, then that we would propose bringing to you at highest and best offer, so market rate offer.
So if a nonprofit is interested, affordable housing nonprofit is interested, you mean the item will come to the council and then you will provide likely potential market rate estimate, but the council might have the discretion to allow a lower price for the property?
If we have expressed interest during that first period, the 60-day notice period, then we would sit down with whichever entity it is that brings forward the ideas, or multiple entities should there be, and make sure that we understand their proposals. They would likely provide us a written proposal, and we would bring that to the council in closed session for direction. So we wouldn't negotiate with them without having terms and price conditions from the council expressed in closed session.
Okay, just for disclosure, I think I have forwarded an email to city manager because I had, I think since 2019, Bay Area Housing Corporation was interested in developing that property. And I was informed that they recently received the funding for 4 bedroom of memory care units for especially people who are developmentally disabled.
We have that inquiry, and they will certainly receive a notice that the property is available, and they'll have the ability to express interest for sure.
So at least there is probably one interested party.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think just for clarification, we do have the Surplus Land Act that requires us to put up 60 days for any nonprofit before we put it on the market.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. If there are no more questions from the council, I'd like to open up for public comment, please.
Yes, Mayor, I have one speaker card for Community Hall, and I see one hand raised on Zoom. Jennifer Griffin has submitted a speak-to request. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, City Council. I'm a bit concerned about the city disposing of this property. I remember when the city wound up getting it, and it's part of the entrance to Blackberry Farm, trying to solve the issues of the very, very narrow driveway, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm a bit concerned that we're putting this up for Surplus Land Act. Isn't that a bit drastic? Are we doing this because we think we've lost all this money because of the Apple audit? I think that's kind of overreacting. I believe that there had been a group of special needs parents that were looking at this property. This was 2 to 3 years ago. Those parents came and sat and did their time in our city council chambers. And they repeatedly came up and said, we need housing for our children. And I'm a bit concerned that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We have this piece of property. We made a promise that we would have more special needs housing, and we're just throwing it out. You could have someone come in there and put in a builder's remedy and build like the Sloat Tower that they're trying to build in the beach area of San Francisco that's 25 stories. And you're gonna have that sitting at the entrance to our jewel of Blackberry Farm? No, 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 no. I would like to have a full accounting of why this property, which it has a house on it, I've been in it before. There were meetings that Sandy James ran in 2005, and we were in there about public decisions. That doesn't seem to happen anymore. Things are done behind closed doors, sleight of hand. Why is this property being dumped in Surplus Land Act, where you can have a builder who doesn't want to provide special needs housing throw up 20 stories of market rate townhouses, destroy the entrance to Blackberry Farm, and make a complete disaster and disgrace to Monte Vista? This is where we're going with this. Okay, I don't know the motivations. This is a fine piece of property. We shouldn't be throwing it out just to some greedy developer who wants to put up a Sloat Tower. Even Senator Wiener has said the Sloat Tower is absolutely ridiculous. Well, I don't want a Sloat Tower in Monte Vista. I don't want a builder's remedy in the middle of Blackberry Farm. What a disgrace. And I'm going to throw it out there right now. The builders are so greedy that they would deny parents land to have a house for their special needs family members. Give me a break. We need to hang on to this. Thank you.
That was chime in. So we will move to Zoom. We have Rhoda Fry and R. Wang with their hands raised. Welcome, Rhoda.
Good evening, council members. This is, Mr. Morley mentioned, the property was purchased in order to get some land dedication, which happened quite some time ago. The other thing is that the city had promised the previous occupant that she could remain there as a caretaker, and the city reneged on that offer. And it was really bad policy to have done that. And since then, the house has blighted the neighborhood. The house could have been sold to a member of the public who could have lived in it, renovated it, or rebuilt it. But the decision was to sell it to the city to do something good for the community, and so that the previous occupant could stay in it. And it didn't happen. And I'm still really, obviously, I'm still really sad about that. Really appreciate Ms. Griffin's comments. I was unaware of the consequences of the Surplus Land Act. Look, the house was purchased with money from the general fund. I think it should go on the market again, and immediately, because this is the time to be selling property, not at Christmas time, which is probably what would happen if we go through all of this rigmarole, and get the highest price for it. I know that when you look at the property from a 30,000-foot view, it looks like it's a great usable piece of land, but it's actually a difficult piece of land. It's on a hillside. It's built on fill. There's a retaining wall inside that is bulging out when the basement had been dug out many years ago as the family of 7 had expanded. And I'll also give you a little piece of history that the house had previously been owned by a gentleman who worked as a doorman in the city of San Francisco, and he took the train from Monte Vista Station to San Francisco. Yes, there was a train line from Monte Vista Station to San Francisco. let's not do this land app thing if possible, put it on the market, and use the money for something that is more appropriate. This land is really hard to develop. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhoda. And our next speaker is R. Wang. Welcome, R.
Hello, hi. This is R. Wang, your former two-time Planning Commissioner Chair. Like Jennifer, I'm concerned that the City Council decided not to cut unnecessary staff, real FTEs, not fake FTEs, and decide to sell property because we don't have the funds, because we are not being fiscally prudent and can't even be fiscally compliant. We couldn't even have a real 4th of July, and we had staff members, instead of cutting staff members, the staff members went to Los Altos to celebrate 4th of July. Shouldn't this property be used for its original purpose? Why did the city renege on the original offer? Wouldn't it make more sense to hold out for that property for now? We need a forthcoming, as Jennifer said. Why can't we keep the promises we make to our residents? Why are we selling this now? Why can't we have some integrity on this council? This should be going out now to the public, not surplus land. Please do not sell the property under surplus land. That is just not right. Thank you.
Thank you, R. And Mayor, that is our final speaker.
Thank you. I'm closing the public comment on this item, and thanks for all the public input. I'm bringing back the council for discussion. I'm going to start with a question: is the city or any public agency, when they sell properties, they are subject to the Surplus Land Act? Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor Ray.
Okay, so we do need to offer a 60-day Surplus Land Act, which nonprofit or can purchase it. But of course, we bring it back to the closed session. Is that the proper procedure?
So, Mayor Way, so the state law asks the council to declare the property as a surplus. That's step one. And once council has done that, staff will put it up for a 60-day, notifying all of the affordable housing developers. There's actually a list of all of these people on the HCD website and everyone that's who's interested. So there's a 60-day period for anyone to express a written interest in obtaining the property. Once we have that list, we can bring it back to council in closed session for a further discussion. As Assistant Manager Morley mentioned, if there's no interest, we'll come back to council and notify you of such, and then council can use their discretion to decide what to do next. But all responses have to be responded in written form within 60 days.
Thank you for the clarification. Member Moore?
Yes. So I'm going to go back to the original statement that I was making, and I appreciate the response, but I was the person who put the study session on city-owned properties onto the work plan, and it was the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 work plan, and the item was to inventory and assess existing facilities and prepare a long-range planning report for 3 city-owned properties: Blesch, Byrne, and Stockelmeyer, and $90,000 was allocated for it. And it says the commission would be the Planning Commission and the Department of Public Works. So my concern here is that what I had requested and the rest of that council had agreed to was kind of got a bit of a runaround here, where now the answer has been provided to us, and the answer being to sell the property rather than having the discussion. So that's where we are. We're having the discussion to sell it, and just in the future, when this item came up, I would have preferred that staff said, hey, you bought this property just to get this little sliver of land on the side, and the intention when you bought it was to sell it. We probably should have talked about that already when we put this on the work plan before. Instead, now we're hearing about this in a little bit different manner. Now that we're looking at selling it, my next concern, which I would have liked to have had this nailed down during a study session, is what do we do when we sell a residential piece of property? Do we then use that money towards, like I said, to BMR? Where is this supposed to go? My understanding is that it's going to go right into the general fund, and there is no separate designation. and perhaps this is a question for the city attorney, what do we do and when should we be doing this? What do we do if we want to have this money allocated for something in specific, like BMR? It could be anything else, but if we want to make sure that it's not just general fund, how and when could we do that?
Through the mayor, when the property is sold, that will be a council action, and at that point we will have the opportunity for council, if they desire at the time, to appropriate those funds to a specific use, if that's the council's desire.
Through the mayor, would it be possible for us to have because I'm just coming up with one suggestion here, but could we have an array of possibilities, one being that it goes to the general fund, but if we wanted to, if there's certain things, park amenities, BMR, anything like that, if there were a little menu of suggestions that we could have, that would be greatly appreciated. And also moving forward, if we do something with these other properties, have a couple different options for us. Great, thank you.
So I'm going to follow a question. That is council's decision. It can be anywhere, right? It's not just, you could recommend just one or two options. At that time, the council can decide where it goes.
That's correct. And typically we would recommend that occur in a larger budget discussion for the reason that at that time you're considering multiple options and multiple priorities. And so you have a balance of options in front of you at that time. If the council wants to, for instance, address unfunded needs, we can certainly bring back a list of unfunded needs for the council's consideration at any point along the way.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Chow?
So a question, in case a nonprofit low-income housing developer like Bay Area Housing Corporation is interested in the property, but then they might wish the city could provide some of our BMR funding to partially fund their purchase. How much of the funding do we have, and what the process might look like?
There are many hypotheticals on what we could get for offers for this particular property. This action tonight is simply to start that process to determine that this property is surplus to the needs of the city, so that we can go out and see what the interest is, and then when we have real interest, we'll bring that back to the council for consideration. And at that point, the council can do a whole number of things. If the council wants to do something with this property for below market housing or special needs uses, and the council wants to allocate additional dollars for it, the council is certainly able to do that, and we would provide you information to support your decisions or your inquiries at that time.
Great, thank you.
Before Councilmember Moore, does Vice Mayor Mohan and Councilmember Froon want to say anything? Okay, so Councilmember Moore, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. With regards to that particular property, since we kind of wandered into this territory, I would prefer that we would look, if we're looking at providing land from the city and then selling it at some point, I would want something that is transit oriented, that's making more practical sense. But with that, I would like to move the recommended action for agenda item 14 to authorize the city manager to record a roadway dedication for a portion of 10301 Byrne Avenue, and adopt resolution 23083 declaring the remaining property surplus to the needs of the city, and direct the city manager to proceed with outreach as required by the Surplus Land Act, and authorize the city manager to offer the property for sale subsequent to completion of the requirements of the Surplus Land Act.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll open up discussion after we have a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Fung. Okay. So we have a motion proposed to motion by Councilmember Moore, second by Councilmember Fung as the recommended action. Open for discussion. Councilmember Chow?
It's a question I probably should have asked earlier. So I do think that this is property we should have disposed of it, rather than seeing it being deteriorating over the years. So I thank you for bringing the item over, but I do wonder the timing on why now, because this was not requested or discussed earlier. So just wondering, is there a deadline or something? Why now?
There is no deadline and no magic to the timeline. We had capacity to bring this one forward. To this stage, it's a straightforward process, and we have capacity to move it through the rest of the process over the next several months. So we thought it was an opportune time to bring it forward.
So are there other items that's coming that the council is not aware of?
The council was aware of surplus properties. I think it was, as Councilmember Moore pointed out, on your work plan, so that it shouldn't be a surprise that this one is
But
one
we
that...
never discussed it. We haven't had a chance to discuss that. So I'm just curious.
And through the mayor, you have the opportunity to discuss it tonight, and that's why we brought it to you early, so that you could see it and make the determination if it was surplus. That's the very first stage on a property discussion.
I think a better process might be having a council study session on all the property that.
Through the mayor, if I may, I definitely heard Councilmember Moore and Councilmember Chow's concern.
We can give direction for this item, because like the member of the public mentioned, 2 items tonight are things that wasn't on the work program, and that's really not following the adopted council procedures. And we told the public in June there were items we couldn't schedule.
Your comment is well noted. Thank you, Councilmember Chow.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I like to make a comment since that's being proposed. This property, and a question too, this property was bought solely for the purpose of having that pedestrian bicycle right away. And the moment that purpose has been done, the project has been done, that's why this property is being brought out for sale. Is that the whole theory of it?
That's correct.
And I really want to say, this is the time. We can say, we don't want to do it. We want to keep it, right? We can say no. So this is the ultimate opportunity for council to decide. We can say, I disagree with it, let's keep it. We can do something about it later. So I really believe that our staff is doing a good job in bringing things when things is done, that this is for the time for us to move this property forward. The other 2 properties have different purpose. One is historical, the other is right by Blackberry Farm. It's not ready to move anywhere. So my comment is, I believe this is the right timing, and it's not, the staff is not saying, council, you have to sell it. I mean, the staff is saying, do you agree or not agree? And I do believe this is good timing. So that is my comment. And we do have a motion. Do we have a second? I totally forgot. Yes, Councilmember Foon seconded. If there's no more discussions, I would like to us to vote by light, please.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And we are moving forward because we have only one last item. I don't think we need a break. The last item is number 15, consideration of canceling October 3rd, 2023 regular city council meeting and calling a special meeting on October 10th, 2023. Do we have a staff presentation?
Mayor Wei, we do have a staff presentation, but Kirsten can walk you through the reason and the proposed new date.
Okay, Kirsten?
Yes, so council has established the council meeting calendar as adopted in January. That goes through January 2nd, 2024. It was amended again in March to address several meeting conflicts. And so an additional amendment is being proposed tonight due to a potential conflict in October. Mayor Wei is out of the country, which poses a conflict with the first meeting in October 3rd. So an alternate meeting date is being proposed of Tuesday, October 10th. We have polled all council members and the community hall is available. The regularly scheduled planning commission meeting, which would normally be held on that date, would be canceled. So if council does wish to adopt this resolution, and it would amend the established council meeting calendar through January 2nd, and staff would also provide the appropriate meeting notifications to the public.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. I'd like to clarify, I think the question was asked, why am I going to be out of the country? I did receive an invitation from New Taipei City's mayor to visit back because he is inviting all of his Friendship Cities mayors to go back. This is going to be on my own expense, and I like to be able to support his propositions that all his mayors of his Friendship Cities go back for a major delegation. So I just received invitation a couple weeks ago, but I was informed by his staff about a month ago. So I am asking my colleagues to accommodate my schedule to move this meeting 1 week later. So that is, I know the question is why am I going back to Taipei again? So this is the answer. So I'm going to open up for questions, if not from council, and I would open up for public comment. Any questions from the council?
So I believe the city has an ordinance that would allow council member to attend a council meeting remotely, especially the technology is available. So is that possible so that we don't move council meeting again? I already got complaint about this meeting being not on the regular Tuesday. So I think everyone has travel schedule. And if it's only one person traveling, is it possible that we provide the proper notice so that the mayor can attend remotely?
So my answer is, with the time zone difference, I probably will not be able to attend a 4, 5, 6 hour meeting with the time zone difference in Taipei. So my colleagues don't have to accommodate me, but I'm asking for accommodation.
I believe 7 o'clock our time at night is morning in Taiwan, so the time
About
zone
10
would
o'clock,
work
and
out.
I will be in activities.
The time zone would work out. I mean, if you were in here, you would make time for the council meeting. Even if you are in Taiwan for that day, you could make time for the council meeting. So it's not a time zone issue. It's that you would not make time for the council meeting
The activities, it's arranged, I was told, arranged very tight. So I will not be able to at 10 o'clock in the morning, stay in the council for 5 or 6 hours and miss all the activities. I probably just won't go back because, so anyway, this is we don't have the time.
How many days of activities?
I'm going back for a whole week. And
If
the
it's a
activities
whole week, you
the
cannot
activity is
miss
a 5-week
activity
activity.
for 1 day.
Okay, so I can't. Okay, so I'm gonna say.
I'm trying to understand. Usually, if it's a 5-week, missing 1 day is understandable, right? To attend a council meeting, which is our duty.
I think yes, you can reject this. So I'm going to say, with the time zone and the scheduling, it's going to be very hard for me to stay for 5-6 hours during the daytime to attend council meetings here. That is just my personal answer to your question. So
but time zone is not the issue. Because
I'm not going to argue with you, Councilmember Chow. Councilmember Chow, I'm not going to argue with you on this point. It's not worth arguing. I'm just telling you this is my perspective. And I like to, if there's no more questions, open up for public comment, please.
Yes, Mayor, we have one speaker card for Community Hall from Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, City Council. I understand if there are issues with people traveling, Vice Mayor Mohan could run the meeting. It's been done before. She's fully capable. She is the Vice Mayor. So I think the best plan here is that Mayor Wei is allowed to represent the city in Taiwan and that Vice Mayor run the meeting, but the meeting should be put on the correct night. I will tell you right now, I'm very concerned about a number of things that have happened tonight. I had a family party I went to. I came back and I watched some things on TV, and that's why I came down here. I'm really concerned that we're having a lot of, the planning commissions have been completely canceled. Now, we need to talk about this because you all eliminated 3 of the standing city council meeting groups. Okay, that was in January, February. So now all of a sudden, We have had no meetings for like the last 2 weeks. The Planning Commission was canceled, I think last week. I looked ahead, it's canceled next week. Okay, maybe there's no business, but I can tell you right now, we are going to have the Coastal Commission eliminated in this state by some of our legislators and the governor. That scares the bejabbers out of me. That trumps going to Taiwan. That trumps not having planning commissions. That is legislators that are out of control and running their own monopoly at the expense of the public. We also have, I think the Housing Commission was canceled again next week. If you looked at the participation of the public and the city council members and the planning commissioners this time last year, we were running the housing element. We all came in for meetings. We're struggling our way through the reply from HCD to the city. And yeah, the first line of the response said that they had consulted with YIMBY Action and YIMBY Law. That really scares the bejeebers out of me too. What sort of strange monopoly are we running here? The public is scared to death. We don't know where we're going. We're in a basket falling over Niagara Falls, and we're having meetings of our elected officials canceled. And Mr. R, several gentlemen have said things mysteriously, like the lobbying ordinance pops up on the agenda, which I had no idea there were problems with it. Nobody talked about it. And I don't know why that other group thinks they're involved or running the city business. I think we need to keep our meetings, let Vice Mayor Mohan run it.
Thank you,
and you
Jennifer,
go to
that was your
Taiwan.
time.
Thank you.
And we have one more request to speak from Luis Sadati. Welcome, Luis. And then we have one hand raised on Zoom.
Good evening. I just want to talk about needing to be cordial and flexible. Life is complicated, and if one is rigid and fixed on a fixed schedule and things being exactly the way they want, people will be very upset and irate. And in life, you have to pick what is important and what isn't. What I think is important is that everybody on the dais be treated respectfully and not be yelled at, because you're performing a service for the city. That being said, I have actually seen some people at the dais, like today when Mayor Hung asked for a consideration for a schedule change. She was subjected to quite a tirade from supposedly her colleague, quite at length and repetitively over and over again, accusing her of whatever. So I would say there's a lot of changes in life, and all she's doing is asking people to consider and to vote. That's all it is. And I think if people can learn to work in a collegial way, things will go much better. Or you can be all rigid and then you get all upset at the end of your life, because death, taxes, and change, those are the three certainties of life. And speaking of cordiality and decorum, I have actually seen people from the dais, same person actually, ask questions of the city attorney or the city manager and cut them off without giving them a chance to have their full explanation, and then accuse them of not being willing to give an answer when they would honestly say, I can't give an answer, or this is not on the agenda. So basically, I just would like to see things move forward, and when a council member, even if they're a mayor, asks for a consideration, accommodation, people vote yes or no, and don't subject the rest of us to listen to a tirade, which is really not professional in the way to treat a colleague, let alone the mayor. And I'm surprised. Well, I'm learning not to be surprised. But So I think it's a very reasonable request, and people can either choose to accommodate or not. I have no problems. It's a simple request. No big deal.
Thank you, Luis. That is your time. And we have 2 hands raised on Zoom, Rhoda Fry and Danessa Tekmansky. Welcome, Rhoda. Rhoda, I see the volume is bouncing up and down, but I'm just not hearing your audio. Yeah, so I can see you're talking, but it's not, we're not hearing. So let me move to Danessa, and then we'll see if you can work through the audio issues. Welcome, Danessa. Oh, looks like we're maybe having some audio issues from both speakers, because I'm seeing the same. I see the audio feedback is registering, but no, I'm not hearing any sound. So I don't know if video can do something. Let me try and mute each of you again. Okay, Rhoda, I just asked for you to unmute. So Mayor, I'm not quite sure what you would like me to do.
So maybe we can ask the tech team to work on it while we bring it back for council deliberation first, and we can open up the public comment when the audio issue is being fixed. Okay,
apparently
so
they can hear them on Zoom.
Oh.
The participants on Zoom can hear the speakers.
Well, yeah, we can hear it.
cannot hear them on the dais here, or here in Community Hall. So yes, so hopefully video can. Okay.
All right. So let's bring back for council discussion. So I'm going to go first because this is my request. I would not mind if Vice Mayor Mohan runs the meeting, and I would say it's very difficult for me to say whether I can attend the meeting during daytime because I do not know the logistics or the activities that's being planned. So I just can't promise that I will be able to do that. And I'm okay with my fellow council members' decision for me to miss the meeting and have Vice Mayor Mohan run it. So this is a cordial ask. It could be yes, it could be no, and I will not feel personally offended. I do believe that this is a way advance notice. We are in July and this is October, so it would be a very advanced notice to the public that we're going to postpone the meeting a week. So I'm hoping that this is not an unreasonable ask, but I'm okay with my fellow council member decisions. And it is actually not my wish to go back again. It's a long flight. But it is we did receive an invitation from New Taipei City's mayor, and I would like to be able to represent Cupertino to attend the activities that he's arranged for all his friendship cities mayors across the world. So that is my comment, and I'm open up for other comment, and I wish we could hear the public.
Mayor, they resolved the issue if you'd like me to try again.
Okay, okay, now let's go back to a public comment.
Okay, so let's try Rhoda again. Hi, Rhoda. So now you'll need to unmute yourself, Rhoda. It's still not, you're not unmuted, Rhoda. Okay, let me try Danessa. Danessa, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly say it would kind of be appreciated when meetings are running late if people would not make judgment values and commentaries on people's manners that are not information or pertinent to items on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danessa. So let me try Rhoda again. Hello, Rhoda.
Third time's a charm. Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I think that you were muting me on my phone, and I logged on another device on my laptop. Anyway, I do appreciate Councilmember Chow explaining that it was not a time of day issue, because frankly, I would kind of gotten curious about what time would it be in Taiwan at the time. So it isn't a timing issue, it's a scheduling issue, and I totally get that. So I do appreciate that clarification. And neutral about whether the schedule has changed. The thing I am concerned about is there has been a lot of movement in the council meetings, and especially today's meeting. I didn't know that today's meeting had been moved from yesterday until yesterday at 5 o'clock. On Friday, when I looked at the council meeting, and I believe it was Friday, just before the July 4th holiday, it looked like the meeting was going to be on July 5th. And then, and it changed at the last minute. I'm guessing it didn't change at the last minute for you guys, but as far as public notification, it changed. So the more in advance that we get notification, the better. I think that keeping a rhythm is a good thing. And I hope that if this meeting does change, that it will be an exception. We have had mayors and council members not attend meetings in the past due to personal items, and that happens. So it's really about creating a balance between the needs of the community and the individual needs of council members. And I know I have more to say, but I've been running up and downstairs, logging on and off of my phone. So I am at a loss of words to say whatever else I wanted to say. So, oh, now I remember. Yes. Regarding the trip to Taiwan, I'd really appreciate to have a full report of what happened during the city's sister city tour of Taiwan, both from the city manager and the mayor. I understand that there were some economic development meetings that went on, and it would be really good to see how our investment in the mayor and the city manager in particular, how that will pay off. And I'd love to hear a report back from the mayor when she returns from Taiwan in October. Thank you very much. And I apologize for the confusion with my technical equipment.
Thank you, Rhoda. Mayor?
Well, I'm going to close the public comment and thank for all the input. I'm going to bring back to council discussion. I hope it's short because we are close to 10:41. So Council Member Moore, followed by Council Member Chow.
So I appreciate that the mayor has been invited back to Taiwan again this year. I would wish that this were a trip to one of the other sister cities in a different country. I would feel a little bit more comfortable about the rescheduling. When we're rescheduling a regular meeting to a special meeting, it doesn't retain the same elements, and we encountered that issue previously, and it needed to be addressed. So there is that issue. Also, with regards to the policy on the city council or mayor visiting places in an official capacity representing the city, as it was stated, I believe we have a financial policy for paying for part of that, or perhaps all of that. We looked at this policy previously, so I'd like to know what the travel policy is that the city is supposed to be covering for this trip. So there's a couple of things there. What's the policy on payment for it? And then also we made some accommodations for the regular meeting turning into a special meeting, but it was a special meeting like hybrid where all the elements of the regular meeting would be kept, including being able to have future agenda items, which is what we have tonight. So we have one of those hybrid special meetings that's acting as a regular meeting. So if someone could respond to those two parts, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Chow?
I'd just like to encourage council members to try to keep the discussion focused on the agendized item, which is whether this meeting should move or not. Thanks.
So I just verified the time again. If we had a meeting here from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., that's 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Taiwan time. So for example, I had to attend a conference last year in New York, and then because of I have to attend the housing element work on. We have the community engagement group meeting. I had other activities that Monday afternoon. I have to skip that in order to join the meeting to fulfill my obligation. So there are times we choose to attend the conference, especially if for my conference it was only 2 days. So missing one afternoon, I was missing quite a large percentage of events. And if it were 1 week visit, and especially the mayor doesn't even know what she will be missing at this point, I think we really should respect the set regular meeting time for the council meeting. And if it's one morning, skip that. It's a Friendship City meeting. How important it is that we have to rearrange the council meeting so you can have one morning with the Friendship City who you have visited recently. So I'm just wish the mayor could reconsider. I really wish that you can join the meeting remotely. Please consider that seriously. Thank you.
Any other council member discussions? Councilmember Moore?
Quick question. Is this a delegation that's going? Pardon?
It is an invitation from New Taipei City to invite all his Friendship City mayors from the world to attend a week of activities. To answer Councilmember Chow's question, it's exactly because I don't know what's going to be scheduled on that day, and to go back and I can't commit to it, but I want to say this is an agenda item like City Attorney Jensen says. You either vote yes or vote no. It is a very simple ask, but I'm not expecting you to say yes or no. It's really according to what you believe what needs to be done. Okay, so
a really short comment. Sure. Since this is very early, I'm sure their schedule is not finalized yet. If you provide input that on this morning you have council meeting, you cannot attend the event, I'm sure they will arrange activities around your schedule. I'm sure that they do that for a lot of the mayors who likely have their obligations too. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And Councilmember Moore?
I think under these circumstances, I would, I don't like the precedent that it's setting, and I would want the vice mayor to run the meeting and handle it that way. Thank you.
Councilmember Froome, your light is on.
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable and simple ask. I think that it's not something that would become, and as long as it doesn't become a standard practice of the city, that we're doing this all the time, once in the course of the year seems more than reasonable.
I just want to make a very simple comment. As for the travel expenses, I already said I will pay it myself. And I do pride myself in 11 years of school board. I have not missed one meeting. That is why I would like to, it is my obligation being elected to attend all meetings. That is why I'm asking for this change. It's not that I don't trust Vice Mayor Mohan can run a good meeting, that this meeting could be without me. As just personally, I just want to make one more comment is I do pride myself trying to attend every meeting, and on the 11th year school board, I've never missed one meeting. And I'm positive that the schedules that they are doing, it would be very hard to accommodate my personal request. And I'm not saying that I can't Zooming from abroad, but I would like to request the change with such advance notice. And that's just it. I do believe that it's really a simple yes or no. So I would like to, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? The motion is not to do it. Yes.
I don't believe we have a motion.
No? I saw Councilmember Molina made a motion.
I didn't word it as a motion, but
Yeah.
my motion would be to deny the request.
Yes, I think I heard the motion. Do we have a second?
I second that, and for the record, this is the second time this year that we are changing council meeting for this sister city, for the same sister city, the second time this year.
Okay, that's a motion and a second. Any discussions? If not, just one comment. This is not a sister city trip. This is a different trip. So, I wish I could go to Bhubaneswar, but this is not. So let's vote by light, please.
Oh, wait.
We have more comments?
You said this is not?
This is not a sister city student trips. It's a different. I'm just saying that that's a different. It's a different trip.
New Taipei City is not even.
Councilmember
No,
Chow,
it is
you're
not our
sorry.
sister. Sorry.
New Taipei City is not a sister
Yeah,
city.
it's a friendship city.
Just a friendship city.
That's correct. So let's
And then
vote.
we are changing the council meeting time a second time.
Okay, let's vote by
for-
light.
Okay.
The motion is to deny it.
The motion fails with Chow and Moore voting yes.
Another motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 23-084, amending the established City Council meeting calendar through January the 2nd, 2024.
And do I have a second?
I would like to, we'll go for the second, and I'd like to make an amendment to it.
I'll second it, Mayor.
Okay, it's being moved and seconded. Actually, I would like to make a friendly amendment. If this motion passes, I would like the special meeting to be run as a regular meeting.
I am very happy to accept that.
Okay, so do you accept it as a second? To run the special meeting as a regular meeting?
Yes, I accept.
Okay, so we have a motion and a friendly amendment that's approved by both the motioner and the seconder. Now we open for discussion, and please keep it brief. It's going to 11 o'clock.
Mayor,
I have
just
a
for
question,
clarification.
but
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Moore has an amendment. So.
When you say to run as a special meeting, does that mean to list the normal, the regular items of business on the agenda?
That's
when it's
right.
published? Okay.
Yes.
Do I ask my question, or Councilmember Moore? I thought she has an amendment.
I made a friendly amendment first. She can make another friendly amendment to the friendly amendment.
Through the mayor, that was the same thing, to make sure that all the items would be included.
Okay, thank you.
Question is, I think that following Tuesday is normally a planning commission meeting. So are we canceling that planning commission meeting, or will the planning commission move to 1 week earlier?
City manager.
Sure.
It's-
Through the mayor, so we've already double checked with community development, and that they can accommodate canceling the meeting in advance, and we're talking about 3 months in advance. So we're looking at the future project that's in the pipeline. It will not impact anything.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Councilmember Froon, seconded by Vice Mayor Mohan, with a friendly amendment that's by Mayor Wei and accepted by both motioner and the seconder. Do we
Pardon?
More discussions? Okay, Councilmember Moore.
Just a quick clarification. So the Planning Commission meeting is being canceled and our meeting is being moved off by a week. Okay. Just want to clarify that. That's what's happening.
And further clarification is that the planning commissioner, if they need to meet, you will not, it would not impede the planning commissioner's work.
Through the mayor, so as stipulated in the staff report, that is the proposal.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Can we vote by light right now? Okay, let's vote by light.
The motion as modified carries with Chow and Moore voting no.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving to council reports and comments. I believe we turned in our council reports in. And so city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Wei. We do have a video summarizing the flag raising event from 4th of July. Video, can you cue it up? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Wei. Just have, if I can have another second, I would like to have a special shout out to staff who provided the opportunity for the residents to celebrate 4th of July. And this includes many, many staff in the Public Works Department, Parks and Rec Department, in addition to our Sheriff's Department. Thank you.
I'll echo that. We can see that they prepared the day before and all through, and I bet the cleanup is also a lot of work. So thanks, staff, for all your work to make our 1st July Day a memorable day to remember our Independence Day. So with that, I believe the meeting is adjourned.
Pardon, Mayor?
Oh.
Pardon, there were informational items, council and staff comments, and future agenda items.
Right, we don't have any information items, and we are at 10:57. So according to our city, we are according when that item is over, we are, unless the council decides to extend it, we are adjourned.
I have a request for like an agenda item.
You can always email me. Okay. Yeah. Because the meeting is adjourned.